At exactly 2:17 a.m., the archivist stopped breathing. Not metaphorically, not emotionally. His lungs simply froze. Because the page he was holding was not blank. It was newer than the rest of the diary. The paper was whiter. The ink was darker. And the handwriting, though careful, looked recent. Yet the diary was dated 1838. The archivist later said the room smelled like damp wood and old iron, as if the past had begun to sweat. The lights hummed. The air felt crowded. And then he noticed the final line written at the bottom of the page. They are still counting us. No signature. No explanation. Just that sentence. This diary belonged to Hawthornevale Plantation, a cotton estate that once sat along a forgotten river bend in the Deep South. Official records say it was abandoned after a fire in 1849. No deaths listed. No scandal recorded. Just a quiet disappearance from tax rolls and maps. But the diary tells a different story. It was written by Caleb Hawthorne, a devout church elder, respected landowner, and public defender of family order. His entries were calm, organized, God-fearing, until the year families began to be sold. And then the diary changed. This is not a story about slavery alone. It is about what happened after the sale, about where families were sent when they were separated, about why some plantations did not just trade labor, but people who remembered too much, and about why, nearly 2 centuries later, someone added a page that should not exist. Caleb Hawthorne believed order was holy. His diary reads like a ledger of righteousness. Weather reports, crop yields, church attendance, births, deaths, punishments, confessions. Nothing emotional, nothing wasted. He wrote every night at the same hour, same chair, same candle. Even his handwriting obeyed rules. In the early pages, families are listed together, husbands, wives, children. Hawthorne referred to them not by names, but by units. He believed separation caused unrest. Unrest led to prayer meetings. Prayer meetings led to questions. And questions, he wrote, were the enemy of peace. But in March of 1839, something changed. Hawthorne began receiving visitors from outside the county. Churchmen, school trustees, a traveling minister who never preached publicly. Meetings were held in the parlor with the doors locked. That is when the diary begins to list families individually. Not sold. Transferred. The word appears again and again. Transferred to church holdings. Transferred to boarding houses. Transferred to care facilities. Children first. Hawthorne wrote, "It is easier to reshape a soul before it hardens." And then something stranger. He stopped recording where they went. Normally, plantations kept careful sale records, bills of transfer, receipts, witnesses. But Hawthorne's books show gaps, entire months missing. No buyers listed. No prices written. Instead, short phrases appear in the margins. Taken at dusk. Delivered quietly. Church responsibility assumed. In one entry, Hawthorne notes a mother screaming as her son is removed. He does not describe her pain. He writes only, "Resistance suggests prior knowledge." What knowledge? The diary never explains. But it does mention a place. A structure referred to only as the House of Renewal. It was not on plantation land. It was not on any map. It was not owned by Hawthorne. It belonged to the church. Children sent there were never recorded again. Adults transferred there were marked with a single symbol, a small cross inside a circle. No deaths recorded. No returns logged. Just silence. Local church records from nearby towns mention an unusual practice during the 1840s, midnight confirmations. Entire groups baptized at once. Names changed. Birthplaces erased. Some of these individuals later appeared as workers, servants, or wards in distant counties, unable to recall parents, siblings, or even their original surnames. Witnesses described them as obedient, empty, and unnaturally calm. A former schoolteacher wrote in a letter, "They speak as though remembering someone else's childhood." Another wrote, "They flinch at hymns they have never heard." Hawthorne's diary, meanwhile, grows colder. He writes less about God, more about containment. One entry ends with a warning. Families remember each other. Memory spreads. The work must be done completely. And then, on the final original page, the ink thins, as if the pen was pressed too long against paper soaked with sweat. If this book is found, Hawthorne writes, "Know that we acted to preserve the future. There is no signature, only a fingerprint pressed into the page. Too clear, too dark, as if it was left by someone who did not want to be forgotten. The House of Renewal does not appear on any map. Not county maps. Not church land records. Not even hand-drawn surveys kept by plantation owners. Yet dozens of documents reference it. Always the same way. Always vague. Always afraid. It stands where the river bends, but refuses to turn. One church letter says. Another calls it a place that corrects what blood remembers. According to Hawthorne's diary, wagons left the plantation at night. No lamps. No songs. Children wrapped in quilts so they would not see the road. He wrote that silence was required to prevent attachment. That sentence appears 7 times. Former residents of nearby towns later described seeing figures pass through the trees after midnight. Never running, never speaking, always walking in lines of 3. One man said the horses refused to look at them. The House of Renewal, when finally located decades later, was nothing more than burned ground and stone foundations swallowed by moss. But beneath it, investigators found something worse. A cellar, too large for storage, too clean for animals, too organized to be forgotten. The cellar had no windows, only hooks along the walls, rows of benches, and iron rings set into the floor. Church notes described the space as instructional. Children were kept there first. They were not beaten. They were not starved. They were taught new names, new birthdays, new prayers. If they spoke of parents, they were isolated. If they cried, they were moved to the dark. One document says, memory must be loosened, like soil. Adults arrived later. Many never left the cellar. Not because they died, but because they were deemed unfit for renewal. Their names vanished from every record at the same time. The church called it severance. It was not violent. It was slow. Hymns sung at the wrong pitch. Prayers repeated until words lost meaning. Confessions demanded for sins never committed. People were told their families were dead, then told they never existed, then punished for insisting they remembered. Hawthorne wrote, after 14 days, most subjects stop asking. After 30, they stop using first-person language. They say this body, this voice, this child. One margin note reads, success confirmed when subject dreams of blank rooms. Not all children broke. One girl, identified only as Edot, appears repeatedly in church notes. She refused her assigned name, refused baptism, refused to forget her mother's face. They moved her to the cellar. Weeks later, Hawthorne writes, she hums at night, tunes no one taught her. The hymns stopped working on her, so they tried something else. The diary page describing it is torn, but a sentence remains. Shared memory creates infection. After that entry, all references to E cease. But something strange happens. New entries begin to show corrections. Dates crossed out. Names altered. Entire events rewritten. As if someone was editing the past. By 1845, nearby towns reported odd behavior. People forgetting funerals they attended. Children failing to recognize parents. Church members repeating sermons word for word, weeks apart. One minister resigned, saying, our prayers are being answered by something that is not God. He vanished 3 days later. The House of Renewal burned soon after. Officially, it was an accident, but Hawthorne's final note says otherwise. The work escaped its walls. That brings us back to the extra page, the one written long after Hawthorne died. Its handwriting is steady, modern, calm. It lists names, not plantation records, living people. And at the bottom, the same sentence again. They are still counting us. Because whatever was built in that cellar, whatever learned how to erase families, never needed the building again. The archivist noticed something no one had before. The diary was not written in order. Dates jumped forward, then backward. Some entries repeated with slight changes. But when the pages were laid out side by side, a pattern appeared. The diary was not a memory. It was a path. Certain words repeated at regular intervals. Certain phrases appeared only after others were read first. And the more the archivist followed the sequence, the more the final pages seemed to respond. As if the book expected to be read correctly. One sentence appeared faint at first, almost invisible. But after hours under light, the ink darkened. If you are reading this, the town has already taught you how to forget. The archivist said that line made him feel exposed, like something had been watching him long before he opened the book. The diary did not include drawings, but it described distances. 7 minutes past the third bell, where water forgets its name. where the ground feels hollow under prayer. Cross-referencing church bells, river routes, and abandoned parishes revealed something disturbing. The House of Renewal was not alone. There were others. Not plantations. Not prisons. Places hidden inside ordinary institutions. Orphanages. Seminaries. Charity homes. Each placed just far enough away to avoid notice. Each connected by shared language. Shared hymns. Shared silence. County records from the late 1800s show orphanages with unusually high intake and almost no discharge. Children were not adopted. They were reassigned. New names. New ages. New histories. Birthdays were banned. Staff journals describe birthdays as anchors. One note reads, "A child with no date cannot return." Former residents later reported the same recurring dream. A long table. No faces. A voice asking them to count. They always woke up before reaching the end. In several towns once connected to Hawthorne's network, bells rang without anyone pulling the rope. Always at night. Always once. Always followed by silence. Old sermons warned parishioners not to answer doors after the bell. Renewal requires consent, one sermon said. But consent can be shaped. Families who ignored the warning reported missing relatives. No signs of struggle. No goodbyes. Just empty beds. One town appeared again and again in the diary's margins. Same population count for nearly 50 years. No growth. No decline. Births matched disappearances exactly. Census takers noted residents struggled to recall grandparents. Graveyards had markers with no names. Just dates. Repeated dates. As if the town was recycling time. A visiting doctor wrote, "They age, but something in them stays unfinished." Not everyone forgot cleanly. Some people broke down. They heard voices during hymns. Smelled smoke where there was none. Dreamed of hands letting go. These people were called unsettled. The diary lists ways to handle them. Isolation. Relocation. Permanent care. One line is underlined twice. An unsettled subject can awaken others. That fear shows up everywhere. Fear not of rebellion, but of remembering together. E. Near the end of the diary, a name appears again. Just one letter. E. Written in a different hand. The entry says, "She was never erased. Only buried." Below it, she is teaching them to count backward. The archivist said that page made the room feel smaller. Like the walls were listening. The diary becomes obsessed with counting. Days. Children. Voices. One phrase repeats. What is counted can be kept. But near the end, it changes. What is counted can escape. The final original entry reads, "They believe forgetting is safety, but forgetting is how doors stay open." The archivist left a note before he vanished. Just one sentence. The diary is not warning us. It is reminding us. His desk was untouched. The book was gone. If families were erased to stop something from spreading, what happens when the memory survives anyway? And if the counting never stopped? Who is still being counted now? By the early 1900s, plantations were no longer the safest cover. Too visible. Too many eyes. Too many records. But the system did not end. It adapted. The language changed. Renewal became care. Severance became treatment. Unsettled became unwell. Institutions replaced cellars. Hospitals. Boarding schools. State homes. Places people trusted. Places families sent their own children to, believing they would come back healed. Many never did. And those who did came back, different. A rural hospital built in 1912 shows up in the diary's later annotations. The building still stands. Its basement has sealed windows. Its blueprints show rooms that do not exist. Former nurses described a night ward. Patients brought in without names. Discharged without records. They were kept awake. Not with pain. With repetition. Same questions. Same prayers. Same counting exercises. Count backward until the face fades. One nurse recalled being told. If a patient resisted, they were labeled dangerous. Moved downstairs. No one followed. During the Great Depression, orphan trains moved children across the country. Officially, it was charity. But the diary mentions mobile reassignment. Children moved too often to form roots. Too often to remember. Some were placed in homes already connected to the network. Church-going. Quiet. Orderly. Homes where questions were discouraged. One foster record includes a note. Child insists on imaginary siblings. The child was transferred 2 weeks later. No destination listed. Church bells faded. Sirens replaced them. Factory whistles. Curfews. Emergency alerts. The sound still meant the same thing. Stay inside. Do not gather. Do not remember together. The diary praises modern noise. It keeps them from hearing themselves think. That same town from earlier pages appears again. Still the same population. Now with cars. Electric lights. A movie theater. But no high school graduates who leave. No old photographs of family reunions. Visitors say the town feels calm. Too calm. People smile at the wrong moments. They answer questions too quickly, as if rehearsed. In 1936, a local preacher tried to preach about memory. He spoke of families, of shared suffering, of names passed down. The sermon was never finished. He collapsed mid-sentence. Official cause, exhaustion. The diary notes. Near breach contained. The letter E appears again, now described not as a child, but as an idea. She appears in dreams. She restores faces. She teaches the lost how to ask. Hospitals reported patients waking up crying for people they could not name. Children began drawing the same picture. A table, empty chairs, hands reaching. The diary finally explains the fear. Families share memory naturally. Stories pass without permission. Names survive. A single family can undo years of work. So families were broken, scattered, taught to forget each other. Not out of cruelty, but control. The final dated entry is from 1947. It reads, "The method is now self-sustaining. No more houses. No more diaries. They will erase themselves. Below it, in different ink. Unless they remember together." The last note is not written. It is described. A sound like many people inhaling at once. After that, nothing. The archivist was not the first person to find the diary. He was just the first to read it all the way through. Library logs show the book was checked out before. Returned early. Sometimes returned with pages slightly out of order. Sometimes returned damp, as if exposed to breath. One librarian recalled a man who stared at the book for hours without turning a page. He said it already knew he was there, she said. The archivist ignored those stories. He believed history stayed put. The diary disagreed. There was no struggle, no broken lock, no missing items. His phone was left on the desk, screen dark. The last thing he searched was not about Hawthorne. It was a list of local families. Names circled, some crossed out. In his final voice memo, he whispers, "They aren't gone. They're incomplete." Then, softer, "I think I was one of them." After the archivist vanished, reporters spoke to people in towns tied to the diary. They described the same feeling. Something missing at reunions. Photos with spaces where someone should be. Stories that stop mid-sentence.